being sent to the Middle East, sir, what role could they serve other than preparing the way for potential ground invasion? Are you concerned that this could embroil the U.S. in the kind of prolonged conflict?
This is not going to be a prolonged conflict. We can achieve them without any ground troops, without any. Now, in terms of why there's deployments, number one, the president has to be prepared for multiple contingencies, which I'm not going to discuss in the media. We can achieve all of our objectives without ground troops, but we are always going to be prepared to give the president maximum optionality and maximum opportunity to adjust to contingencies.
On March 28th, Secretary of State Marco Rubio assured reporters that the United States can achieve all of its objectives in Iran without a ground operation. He said the troops being sent to the region are there only for emergencies, to give the president maximum optionality should contingencies emerge. He said the war would be over in weeks, not months, but the reality on the ground looks quite different. Right now, more than 50,000 American soldiers are stationed across the Middle East, and that number is growing by the day. Thousands more Marines, paratroopers, and warships are pouring into the region from every direction. These are not forces positioned for contingencies. These are forces positioned for a ground war. The most dramatic arrival came on March 27th when the USS Tripoli steamed into U.S. Central Command waters after a high-speed transit from its home port of Sasebo, Japan. The Tripoli is an America-class amphibious assault ship, sometimes called a Lightning carrier because it can deploy up to 20 F-35B stealth fighters from its flight deck. It left Japan on March 11th and crossed the Philippine Sea, the Strait of Malacca, and the Indian Ocean in just over 2 weeks, a pace that underscored the urgency of its mission. On board was the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, carrying approximately 2,200 Marines, including 1,200 ground combat troops. Together with the sailors and aviation personnel aboard the Tripoli and its escort ship USS New Orleans, the group brought roughly 3,500 additional American service members into the theater. The Tripoli did not come alone. Its full amphibious strike group includes the guided missile cruiser USS Robert Smalls and the destroyer USS Rafael Peralta, both armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles and advanced Aegis combat systems. CENTCOM confirmed that the group brings transport aircraft, strike fighters, and amphibious assault assets, the kind of equipment typically used when preparing to deploy troops on hostile ground. But the Tripoli is only one piece. A second amphibious force is already on its way. The USS Boxer, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, departed San Diego on March 18th, weeks ahead of its scheduled deployment, carrying the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit. The Boxer group includes 2 additional warships, USS Comstock and USS Portland, along with approximately 2,200 Marines and 2,000 sailors. The 11th MEU has an extensive combat history in the Gulf. During the First Gulf War, it took part in the amphibious deception operation that pinned Iraqi forces along the Kuwaiti coast. In 2004, it led operations in Iraq's Najaf province. Now it is heading back to the same waters. When both Marine Expeditionary Units are in theater, the United States will have close to 5,000 Marines within striking distance of Iran's coastline. And then there are the paratroopers. On March 25th, the Pentagon confirmed that elements of the 82nd Airborne Division received deployment orders for the Middle East. The initial force includes roughly 2,500 soldiers drawn from the division's immediate response force. The deployed contingent includes 2 battalions from the 1st Brigade Combat Team and the division commander, Major General Brandon Techtmeyer. The presence of a full division command element is significant. When you send a division headquarters forward, you are building the command structure required to coordinate complex multi-service military operations. The 82nd Airborne's mission profile is built around speed, surprise, and violence of action. These are soldiers trained to parachute into contested environments, seize airfields, and hold them until heavier forces arrive. In 2020, the same division deployed to the Middle East after the killing of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. Now they are returning, and the stakes appear far higher. These forces are spreading across a network of American bases stretching from Qatar to Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar serves as the forward headquarters for U.S. Central Command. The base sits just 175 miles from Iran across the Persian Gulf and has already been targeted multiple times since Operation Epic Fury began. Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia was struck by Iranian missiles and drones, wounding at least 15 American service members.
The Strait of Hormuz itself remains the central flashpoint.
The bases remain operational.
Iran effectively closed the waterway to most commercial shipping at the start of the war.
The picture is equally formidable. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group remains active in the Arabian Sea, conducting continuous operations. Meanwhile, the USS Gerald R. Ford pulled into port
Prince
for
Sultan
repairs
Air Base in
after
Saudi
sustaining
Arabia,
strain from
another
weeks
key
of
hub for American
high-tempo
operations, was struck
A
by
third
Iranian
carrier,
missiles
the
and
USS
drones
George
on March
H.W.
28.
Bush is now moving toward the Mediterranean to replace it. USS warships are positioned throughout the Strait of Hormuz, the Red Sea, and the Persian Gulf. The Strait of Hormuz remains the central flashpoint. Iran effectively closed the waterway to most commercial shipping at the start of the war. Nearly 20% of the world's oil supply normally passes through this narrow channel. President Trump demanded that Iran reopen the strait, later extending the deadline. Rubio warned that Iran might attempt to impose a permanent toll system on the waterway. But the most revealing signal came from the Pentagon itself. The Washington Post reported that the Department of Defense is actively preparing for weeks of ground operations inside Iran.
The plans under consideration include the potential seizure of Karg, as well as raids on coastal military positions near the Strait of Hormuz.
These would not be a full-scale invasion, but targeted military operations. Officials estimate the objectives could take weeks or possibly a couple of months. One former defense official described the plans as extensive and well-developed. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit even conducted chemical and nuclear defense drills en route to the Gulf. Iran's nuclear facilities, coastal missile batteries, and fortified
thousands
islands
of
are all
combat
considered
troops on top of the
potential
50,000 already.
The buildup of forces suggests the United States is preparing for a critical decision. Rubio says no ground troops are needed, yet the Pentagon continues planning for ground operations, while more troops and warships move closer to
provocation in the
Iran's
strait,
coast,
waiting for the order that may have already been written.